like that.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi there.
How are you?
Good to see you. It seems like it's been a while since we talked.
I know. It was like the last show. Well, a little texting in between, but yeah, for sure. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm a little tired. I was out.
I said the last we talked, you had a cough.
Yeah, it's getting better. It's still there, but I was outside today gardening and I was making up flower baskets and doing some landscaping and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm a little tired, but I'm really glad I finally went outside too.
Yeah, you do have like a little glow on your face and all that fun stuff. So that's good. And then you had also, because you called me up last week, right before you had to do a big presentation with the SSE, right? SSE. And
Society for Scientific Exploration.
And I wanted to give you a pep talk. But I give you these amazing pep talks, if I say so myself, and you never call and give me the results. And I'm like, how did it go? How did it go? So how did it go?
Yeah, I'm so busy. Like by the time it's over, now I have like 10 other things I'm focusing on, and I don't tend to look back too much. But yeah, it was, the best thing that came out of it. It was a 2.5 hour remote viewing workshop, but I also needed to go over the scientific research, like in the past, present, and there was a lot to cover. So that when I get nervous before a talk, it's usually because there's just so much to cover, and I know I'm with my 50 million slides, I'm only going to get to 30 million, which what I ended up, I changed it right before. I had it all worked out and all planned. And then I kind of intuitively tuned in and I was like, should I do something different? And I had planned I was going to cover the research for the first hour and then go into methods and have them practice targets in the second. And then I just got, they're going to want to practice right away. They're going to like start falling asleep if I just blab on for an hour. So I changed everything, which meant I didn't get to half of my slides. But the most important thing is they really nailed the target. Like not everybody, because I didn't get to see everyone's sessions, but a few people sent them to me. And what I had done was at the very last minute, I asked Danny to go out in the rain over to our bridge. And on the bridge, it was pouring rain. We had walkie-talkies, which I didn't know we were going to have walkie-talkies, but he put it like right in front of my computer right before he went, the workshop started. And so while everyone's there, I'm trying to figure out how to work this walkie-talkie to tell him to go over there. I couldn't get it to work, so I just yelled out the window and he ran to the bridge. And sure enough, one person afterwards, she's a scientist herself, but she did the remote viewing session and actually had a picture of a bridge with water underneath it, the ducks. He had taken pictures of ducks. So, and she didn't know I lived in Oregon, or on a river. So I was really impressed with that. And other people had pictures that looked like roads, things like that. So yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
The proof is in the pudding, and that's.
And I love pudding. Did I ever tell you that I love pudding? I love chocolate pudding. I like vanilla pudding, rice pudding. And then yogurt is kind of like a fruity pudding. So I kind of like yogurt. I love pudding. Ask anybody in my family.
Have you ever had butterscotch pudding?
I love butterscotch pudding.
I've got some in the cabinet right now. I keep looking at it thinking like, oh, I need to make some, but not exactly on the low carb plan.
No, I know, but if that's all you eat.
If all you eat is pudding.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking like we could start a diet like the pudding diet. You know, you have the cabbage diet, you have the meat diet. Why not the pudding diet? Just don't eat, just eat that many calories in pudding.
We might have a heart attack after a month,
I'm
but
not taking responsibility for that.
you try it and let me know how that goes.
Oh, right. Yeah. Really. I have to tell you, so in my last 6-week class in remote viewing, our last target, let's see, I guess I can't talk about it because there might be people listening and they didn't finish their sessions and turning it in. But what I will tell you is one of the viewers nailed it like crazy. And so, like, I guess next time I'll talk about it. Maybe I'll even show, with their permission, I'll show some of it because it's so amazing. We should show some of these sessions to people,
Yeah.
because I think it would be really cool for people to see like successes and things like that. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's so important to show people that. And by the way, what happened with that target that a bunch of us worked on? Because it was really weird. I went into my bedroom to grab my clothes and I found this piece of paper where I'm talking about a murderer, a killer, and like that he wants to kill again. And I'm like, where did this come from? And then I was like, oh yeah, I think this is from the transcript I did for Michelle's target, but I don't even know if I sent that to you. And did you get that?
Yeah, the retasking, you drew
Yeah.
the picture of the guy. So
Oh yeah.
we're putting together the email to send out. So all the sessions are turned in, and so we're ready. So what I can tell you first thing is that we had 8 viewers on this, and we teamed up with some people that are retired police, or I think they were state troopers, and they specialize in lie detector tests, and they do analysis on body language and speech and whatever. So we had a team that are going to be, because this is a cold case, and we are going to be working with them, and they're going to be looking at old footage of people, witnesses, and stuff like that. And we're going to put together a huge report. So I will tell you now, because I will be sending this out to everybody in the next couple of days. It was a Jean Benet Ramsey case.
No way, really?
Yes,
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
I know.
Because I think I just stayed primarily on the description of the guy that the perpetrator.
That's
Um,
what we wanted. We wanted you guys to describe the murderer.
wow, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's that. So
Yeah. Are you glad you did it?
yeah, the thing was though, like I was sensing like it was way in the past, and I think like the first session I did was describing him in the past and then trying to describe him now. And I'm just wondering about that, like, because I think this is an issue with so many cold cases. The person could be so incredibly different right now,
Right.
in so many ways, of course, because how long ago is that? That was like 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was
A
what,
lot
in the
than that.
80s? I'm not 80s? Was it the 80s? I think.
Uh,
I'm pretty sure it was the 80s.
yeah. So the person could just be almost entirely like a different person now.
Yeah.
So physically, at least. So yeah, it's interesting that going after both those points in time for information. And it seems like the people analyzing these sessions have to be really aware of, like, is this description about the past or is it about the present? Or it could be
Well, yeah.
totally not.
So they're going to be looking at her mom, when she did, interviews. I think Dr. Phil had the brother on. So they'll be looking at these old things. This will be the 30th year. Okay, the 30th year. And then Lucas said, or they're dead. Yeah, that's an important. kind of 1996.
And, you know, the person could be someone that nobody even suspected, or, you know, that they didn't even interview. So
exactly. Yeah, that's so cool. So we'll be sending that out to everyone. But I want to transition and tell you something else that has been going on, and wrap it up with a nice, cute little story here. So the news just came out that one of the satellites used a radar scan, and they were scanning the pyramids, and they found under the pyramids that there were some things. Well, right, there's a picture there. They saw these tubular structures under the pyramid, and they go down very, very far. I can't remember the exact measurements of them. And they go very far down. And what was so significant for me personally with this is about, I would say, 6 years ago, I did an OBE kind of remote viewing project where I worked for a year to try to get out of my body and go do cool thing. Oh, 2 miles down. Thanks, Sarah. And I so every day at noon, I would go lay down and do kind of like, like a remote viewing or OBE kind of session. But I would have an intention set up with it. So my intention was to go to the pyramids. So this one particular time it worked. Now keep in mind, I must have done this 100 times and only worked 3 times. So this was one of the ones. And so I was aware. I was at the pyramids, I was looking at the hieroglyphics, and I said to myself, hey, I wonder if there's something under the pyramids. And I remember kind of looking around. Now, this is in my mind's, like I was there, but it's kind of hard to explain. And I'm looking, I'm like, wait, I don't need a door. I could just go down underground. And so I shot down, and I saw all these tubular structures under the pyramid. Okay. And I noticed that they were gold, they were made of gold. And then, like in that movie, Inception, where he has a dream within a dream, I had like a OBE within an OBE. And I was imagining when they were making these, and they were taking gold and melting it into these thin, thin pieces, almost like aluminum foil or like a leaf, very thin. And they were melting them into these structures. And I was I felt like under it was some kind of, like, I just had the sense this was a power source. This was not just like a tomb. It was a source of power, and that there was water or some kind of power, and water is power or energy, but running through these tubes. In my mind, when I did that, the tubes were not upright like that. The tubes were kind of, but that could have been like an AOL, like some assumption I made, where I was just imagining the tubes being like a piping system underneath. But when I saw this, I was just like, and you know what, guys, write everything down, because I did not write this down. The only people that witness it are people that I told. And think I got texts from friends that said, oh my God, Michelle, I remember you telling me this story like years ago. So I at least had some kind of evidence of that I did experience this thing. Isn't that so cool?
That is, but can you backtrack a little bit? Because I'm a little confused.
No, I can't backtrack.
And I'm not surprised at all that, because you're always so spot on with your sessions. But I don't understand, where is this pyramid? Where was it found? How do they know about the tubes? Like, I don't know anything about this.
You don't know what the pyramids at Giza in Egypt.
Oh, you're talking about you're talking about the Great Pyramid.
The Great Pyramid.
Well, that's okay. Because I was going to say that sounds similar. I years ago had 2 students that I monitored, and they didn't know it was a pyramid at all as a target, and they got some very similar things that you're describing. But how did they find these tubes? So you're saying that they just discovered these tubes?
Just recently, yeah. And after I had that OBE, I called Professor Robert Scooch. I don't know if anyone knows him, but he's an archaeologist that studies the pyramids. And I called him up on the phone. I'm like, okay, I had this experience, and I said, is it possible that there are gold tubular structures under the pyramid? And he said, Michelle, that makes sense, and we have a lot of theories, but he said that the Egyptian government won't let us go and look anymore because there's been so much abuse on the pyramids that they'll only let them go in certain places. And so he's been trying to work with the government to try to allow him to kind of go into these little nooks and crannies of the pyramid to kind of look for this stuff. And yeah, so it's fascinating to me. It's just so
Yeah,
cool.
I
Yeah.
see the reports are saying this one headline: massive underground structures found beneath Giza pyramids spark ancient energy grid conspiracy theories. And it says a stunning new radar study has sent shockwaves across the internet, revealing a vast subterranean complex beneath the pyramids of Giza, challenging long held beliefs that the structures were built solely as royal tombs. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I encourage people, like, this is what's so fascinating to me. And I didn't even, like, another time I'll talk about my other one about Mars, but this is why it's so important for us to push ourselves into this realm of, the unseen, to, you know, kind of, I don't know if we want to call them gifts. They're not even gifts. They're part of who we are. And I imagine it's almost like they're sleeping right now. And when we do remote viewing and psychic and like we're going to talk about in a minute, telepathy, all these things that people are starting to experience are really, we need to be pushing forward in that, to just kind of step over the bounds, or we put boundaries on ourselves. That's a problem. We need
Well,
to break through that.
well, it is. And, it always gets down to that we start getting information no one knows about. And even as we're doing our sessions, how many times are we dismissing what we're getting? Because that doesn't make sense. Or it's whether it's during our session or afterwards when we find out what the feedback is, it's like, oh, well, there's not vertical tubes at the pyramids, or, so this is a big dilemma, I think, because how can we trust information if we don't yet have input on it? And I continue to see remote viewers too, where they start to get information, but then they're not going after enough information, and it's the extra stuff they go after. Like you said with the pyramid, like you gave yourself the task of going repeatedly, like night after night, to get more and more information. And I think so oftentimes that's what we need. We need those details, and just to keep going after it.
Yeah, I have a saying in my class. Anyone that's listening that took my class, I always say, once you think you're done, get one more thing, because you always kick yourself in the butt afterwards, like, like I should have put that down. It always happens. But yeah, I mean, pushing ourselves to be better, and a little at a time. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. So we can transition now over to the telepathy discussion, because I would hope, I'm hoping that our people in the chat and everything will contribute to this discussion, because I really, really, really want to hear everybody's opinion about it, and their experiences, because I know we have some.
Yeah. And, we've been talking about the telepathy tapes, and probably most people are familiar with them, but if they're not, they're a podcast that people can access on YouTube, and they're talking about the psychic abilities of autistic children, and everything ranging from the research of Diane Hennessy Powell, who is a neuroscientist and psychologist who worked with autistic kids who she started hearing from their parents and their tutors and trainers, because they were saying, you know, this kid is like typing out exactly what I'm thinking and what I'm reading. And then she started to do controlled trials where they would be reading, the teacher, tutor, or parent would be writing down a string of random numbers, and then they would be typing. A lot of them are nonverbal, but they'd be typing, and they would type out exactly what the person, their tutor or parent, was focusing on. And they seemed to only be able to do that when they were focusing. So that's why it was thought to be telepathy. I mean, when the other person was there, you know, writing the numbers, so that they felt like it was very much a mind to mind or person to person connection, as opposed to like what we were talking about, say with the pyramid as a target, you don't have another person focusing on it. Let's say if that was a blind target, you know, in the case you described, going after at night after night, you weren't blind, but you know, so oftentimes we're giving blind targets, but then there's not someone sitting there just focusing. So in this case, it's about one person thinking and focusing on something and the other picking it up. And so I think it's really interesting, because I think I told you this when I first heard about the telepathy tapes. I was like, well, this isn't new, because I've been at Parapsychology Association conferences, like going back 10 years, where Diane was presenting her research, and it was totally mind-blowing then. So like, wow, how did it take this long for it to get really popular? But I will say, when I really listened closely to episode 9 of the telepathy tapes, because I haven't gotten to listen to all of them, I was like, you know, this is really well produced. You know how
she did. I liked it's like it's radio, what is it called? Mind like what do they call it? Theater, mind theater, mind theater.
Yeah, it's kind of what Linda Moulton Howe does. You know, how she'll set up a scenario and then she'll play part of an interview. But I think Kai, with the telepathy tape, she's doing even kind of shorter snippets. So it is very dramatic.
Things are very different now. Oh, I wanted to add, back in maybe like 2000, the early 2000s, me and a group of friends, I think we were reading a book called Kitchen Table Wisdom. It's like the books like Chicken Soup for the Soul, but it's done by a Jewish author, and it has like Jewish themed, you know, ethic-y kind of stories surrounded by that. And I think there was a story in there, I'm almost sure. And we were starting to talk about this because in Israel, they have one of the top schools for autistic kids. And at the time, um, they were talking about typewriters. And what they would do is they'd take the children's hands and just put them on the typewriter, and then they would just type. And so they researched all this, and they were coming up, they were able to communicate. One kid was able to, I guess, precog, or I don't even know what the word would be, but he knew that the house, I think he said, don't go home, fire. And it turned out that the mom left her curling iron on and the house caught on fire. And so, but what happened was, what I recall is that they discounted everything because they felt like the people that were in the room with them were kind of leading them or something, or contributing. But I think back then, the experiments maybe in this area weren't as uh, they weren't as structured as much as they are now, because I know that there's a lot of scrutiny. I guess there was a lot of scrutiny back then too, but anyway, they just, yeah, dropped it.
You know, it is really hard to set up these experiments, and there have been some critics of Diane Hennessy Powell's work as well, although she, her experiments are pretty tight, but the original ones, the first couple she did, I think there were some possible issues. And my friend Rick, he was talking to the father of an autistic boy, and they were getting prepared to do an experiment like this. But the father did not want to like just let the boy just be in a room by himself. Like he was resisting the level of control that was needed. And of course, this is, you know, a potential problem with any experiment, is that the more controls you put into place, the more you're changing the natural way of how things are being conducted. And, you know, are you going to get the same results? But like in the end, Rick said that he just said, forget it, you know, because the father was not willing to make the changes he would need to know that it was an airtight experiment. Because you really have to make sure, you know, even like having the person that's the telepathic sender, you know, it's real, they really should be in a whole other room. You know, they should be like in even maybe a Faraday cage, or just, you know, somewhere where you just know that there's no way they're getting a cue. But then, you know, the autistic child might get nervous if, you know, they can't see them.
Which was really cool and stuff is that, you know, that this was all kind of prompted by autistic kids. But the truth is that it's not just autistic kids that have telepathy. And I like one of the things that you said about sender and receiver. I feel like there are people that are really good senders and there are people that are really good receivers. Not to say that you can't be both, but in our case, I kind of feel like the things that have happened to us, I'm a good receiver and you're a good sender. Do you want to tell everyone about the story about when you kind of nosed in where you didn't belong?
Well, I'm not sure. Okay, so we've had a few. Like first there was the one where I woke up and I heard you and Kayla having the talk about carpool. And it was just like a conversation in my ear as if we were on the phone, but the phone wasn't near me. Like we were not talking on the phone, but I heard it as loud, and then called you up and you said, yes, that's exactly what we're just talking about right now. So there was that, but then there was the time we were at the Green Valley.
Yes. You remember that? Oh my God. That one freaked me out.
We were at the Green Valley Resort. They have this food court area and we couldn't decide what we wanted. And then I was on one end and you walked all the way down to the other, and it's quite far. I didn't know where you were. And I'm standing there ordering my food, and
I was panicking.
And I heard your voice. Like I thought you were standing right next to me, but I was like, oh, how did she get back here so fast? And I heard your voice. So I like turned and you weren't there. And I was really confused because it was as loud as I had heard it. And what had happened? Why were you panicking?
So I thought you were going to leave. So I was thinking, I think I even whispered it in my mouth, like, because I was panicking because I didn't want you to leave without me. I don't remember why. There was a reason why I didn't want, and I went, don't go, like that. And then when you saw me, and then I said, no, I was telling you not to go. And then I think you said, you go, yeah, I felt like I didn't want to go or something like that. Yeah, it was really weird.
Yeah. Because I remember then I like finally saw you were like way over there. It was like a block away almost. So I was like, oh, that I couldn't have heard her, but I knew that I had. You were right there. But then let's see, we had another time. Well, we had that time in the hotel room when I got really mad at somebody. I won't say who it was, but he was leading
Oh, you said that he?
was leading the conference, and he made a group prediction for everyone that wasn't like, it was supposed to be a collection of, or a compilation of what it was for ARV, and everyone's sessions was leaning to one choice, but he went with the other choice. And when I said, why are you going with that choice? The numbers don't add up. He was like, I'm the boss. I could do what I want. So some people wagered on what he wanted, and they lost money, and it kind of ruined the whole thing. And a few people lost like a few $100s. So
Can I say, I think I know why, because it was Joe McMonagle's session. He had such an amazing session, and so that's why he wanted to go with that. And then I was telling like a few of my friends, I'm like, bet on yourself, bet on yourself. And then we all bet on ourselves. We were, ooh, and we all won. We all won. Yeah, that was
yeah,
good.
and so that was good, but I felt bad for like the people that lost. So anyway, I was in our room. I remember it was like total pitch black in there, and we're both like in our separate beds, and I'm like, I am so pissed off right now. And as soon as I said that, we both saw at the same time, like a light just shot up across the room. It
Yeah,
was like a comet.
yeah,
And I didn't say anything at first. I was like, oh my God. And you're like, did you just see that? That
yeah,
was pretty
yeah.
cool. That was,
Yeah.
I wouldn't call that telepathy, but that was
No,
peeking
that
at
was just something that happened when we're together.
yeah.
'Cause weird things like getting locked in hotel hotel rooms and
Oh yeah, getting locked in the Hyatt in the banquet office.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was really funny. But have we had any other telepathic experiences? I,
Mm,
I don't know if I told you about this when my son Manny was really young. He was only like 2, and we were sleeping. We were sharing a little bed because we were just in a trailer in those days. And so we were lying there. He was asleep, and I was lying there, and I had just had something happen with someone that I was dating at the time, and I I was lying there, and I was like just going over and over in my mind. I was like thinking, is this my fault? Like, I don't think it's my fault, but could it have been my fault? And I'm just thinking, like trying to figure it out. And suddenly, and I'm just thinking this, not saying a word. Suddenly, Manny sits straight up. He's asleep, but he sits straight up and he yells, Mom, no, it wasn't your fault. And then he lays just right back down, like does not wake up. But
oh
he
my God, that's
yeah,
crazy. No,
yeah,
you didn't tell me that one.
yelled at me,
Oh,
like I was annoying him.
oh my gosh. Well, this telepathy is, do you think it's kind of connected to this like power of prayer thing where, and that PK thing and this kind of thing, because when we were in the hotel or when we were in the bank or getting food or whatever in the Green Valley, um, it was high emotion for me. Like there was just a strong feeling like I was feeling. And then you're just telling me now that you were also having a feeling. And then you brought up another one about, I almost said the name, about when you were mad at somebody. And these are all like kind of surrounded by a high burst of emotion. And then it makes me think that when I am put under pressure and somebody's like asking me to be psychic and they go, where am I right now? And you're like, you're right. I'm always good. I always do a great job in that moment. So meaning if we can harness that like burst, I don't even know what it's called, but that burst of power, maybe maybe we need to harness that somehow.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, that's like one of my, this is more about PK. I think I told you about this one time. It was kind of late at night and there was something I was like pretty riled up about. Don't remember what it was, but I was like kind of annoyed and I could feel like this energy in my body, like around my third chakra, solar plexus. And I just had this thought. I was like, I think this is the energy that can be behind PK events, like when you're kind of agitated. But I was actually like feeling it consolidated in my body, in my solar plexus. So it was time to go to bed. And I was like, I have so much energy right now. I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep. So I laid down. And at that time, we were in our other house that was also under renovation. That was probably what I was annoyed about, taking too long. So we had our master bedroom we were sleeping in, and the bathroom was still under construction. And there's all kinds of stuff in there. And I was trying to decide, I was like, okay, I'm going to see if I can harness this energy and move something in the bathroom. And so I really was having a hard time deciding what, because I didn't want to hurt anything. And I knew there were all kinds of power tools and stuff, ladders in there. And so I'm like, okay, what can I move in there, but that I'm not going to break? And because then it's going to take more work to fix things. So I'm trying to figure it out. And finally, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to decide what I'm going to do. I'm just going to move something in there. And so I said, okay, at the count of 3, I'm going to take this energy that's all in my body. I'm going to like imagine it's going into a ball and I'm going to send it over there. And so I'm like 1, 2, 3. And at that moment, at 3, I heard like that on our headboard for an entire 30 seconds above our head. It was
my God.
like Danny just like woke up and he's like, what the heck is going on? And he's looking around and it like he could still hear it because it went on for like 30 seconds and it was like inches above our head.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just could not believe it. I mean, I had not expected that to happen. So, it wasn't something flying, but it was definitely that. Yeah, there's no way that, I mean, there was no one else home. There was nothing behind that wall. It was just a hallway. So yeah, I do think like harnessing the energy and, but it makes sense too. Like, how do we get each other's attention? We get each other's attention because we're raising our voices. Like if I'm just like, Michelle, come over here. But if I'm like, Michelle, come over here, you're gonna hear me, right? Like you're gonna be like, oh my God, what's wrong? Okay, I'm coming over. And it's the same thing when we don't verbalize, but it's a combination of the emotion and the thought together. But I think, sometimes it can just be too much. And like, I like your idea of trying to harness it on the one hand, but on the other, I think sometimes when we're too elevated, we're not always very focused and, it may have the opposite effect. So there's probably, I kind of get this image like a spinning top, like it's got to be like right at the right point because it could fall either way, helping or not helping.
Yeah, we have a couple comments. Do you want to read the first one on the screen?
Sure.
We have another one too.
Is that from Carl?
Yeah.
Carl, good to have you here. He says, I've unknowingly at the time received and transmitted information from another person while in a face-to-face remote viewing session. Well, could you tell us a little bit more about that? I'd love to hear more about that. So he's received and transmitted information.
And then, and then also Lucas, this is kind of cool. He said, I did an informal telepathy experiment with a friend where I successfully communicated a single digit number on my first session. 10% chance though. That's so cool. Like we should do some fun stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that people should just try it. Just constantly be trying, exercises like that. I might, I mean, it's cool to do it with numbers, doing it with unexpected objects and even like kind of picturing different people that and then seeing if the other person like picked up on the description. That could be really cool. Carl said he talked about it on the Irva Cruz talk. We'll have to rewatch that too to learn more. So
I also, when I was listening to the episode, you asked me to listen to the telepathy tapes, episode 9. It kind of focused on these kids that were, and I'm wondering, like, I could see part of it being telepathy, but the other, they were kind of experiencing different realms and then sharing them with people.
right.
Right?
Right. They were talking, well, on a number of episodes, they've talked about something called the Hill, where the different autistic kids describe this place called the Hill, where they seem to meet up with each other and other autistic kids. And different ones have described it without having had any way to know about it from the other ones. So multiple people are describing this place where they're meeting up, like either in their dreams or when they're falling asleep, or at different times. And maybe not even just like throughout the day, they say that they're going there. Myself and Theon, who and we'll have to get Theon on sometime. We've been trying to access the Hill. So we were trying to meet each other in our dreams on the Hill. And then I've been trying to also like meditate on it. And I was getting some interesting inputs as when I started to do that. And I had this really big epiphany. Well, first I'll say, like, I started to hear like some voices, like one voice was saying like, I forgot the exact words, but it was something to the effect of like, here we like, there's not older people aren't older than us here. Like, they seem to be indicating that they liked it, that they could be there and they don't have to deal with like all these older people. And I had this epiphany, like I saw all this, like these different colors that were all swirling together and combining. And I had a sense like this was like the energy of all the different like people and souls. And I had this awareness, when you have an epiphany, it always seems like a way bigger deal than you can probably articulate. But I really understood, and this happened 2 nights ago, more so than I ever have, how we perceptually overlay the idea of separation onto everything. So, this is more of, probably the concept of we're all one. But like, let's say we really are, we're all merged, and there's some, if you just pretended we're all energy and nothing else, like let's say we're all in spirit form, we're still going to have our forms, but we're blending, and some forms are going to be like more bright, some are going to be less, some will be like totally one and then come out, but they're all swirling together. But our usual perception, we're like so obsessed with dividing everything up and labeling everything up. And I was trying to figure out like, how did we get this way? And then I was like, okay, like you need a refrigerator in your house. So you get a refrigerator, and your refrigerator is such a separate item from your couch, or it's such a separate item from your pencil or your desk. But then they're not really, once they're in there, like they're on the same floor, they're in the same place, they're like encountering the same oxygen. But we still, I think because we bring physical objects in for specific purposes, we're just so used to like having the idea that all these different things are separate, and we're constantly projecting separation onto everything. Like that seems to be like our biggest projection. From the time like we are born, our parents are trying to give us names for things and get us to separate everything. We're obsessed with that. So it's not even just like we have to kind of open up to the idea that everything is interconnected, but we have to really look at like this obsession with separating, naming, labeling, dividing.
Yeah, that is such a, I don't know where you got that, but that's amazing. That is
That was from tuning into the hill, and just like it was like this immediate,
like
because
a
because it was like I saw all these pastel colors that were like representing the energy of all the different consciousnesses. And when I looked at that, it was suddenly like, yeah, like this download. And, you know, it's not like this is a totally new concept, but it just like kind of helped me see like this isn't just a little thing. We're completely obsessed with like our thoughts cannot almost like probably every minute we're dividing things up, you
right.
know,
And
for every hour.
when you're engaged in your subconscious, things are not divided up like that. And, that could be like, I know we're talking about autistic kids or people, I've always kind of thought about people with, like maybe they were broken in their mind or something. I don't, that kind of thing. It's not always, we're saying that there's something wrong with them, but really there's everything right about them, because they probably their ability comes because it's they're not separating things. They see everything as one thing. And then what happens, it's kind of like what we talk about in remote viewing, when we have to start adding language or vocabulary to something, like to an ideogram or whatever, that's when we start having problems. So everything that happens before that in the subconscious, if we can somehow, the problem is communicating, but if we could somehow hold on to that, um, that might be kind of where to go.
Well,
Yeah.
and then we're also raised to like separate ourselves from our emotions, you know, and like proper socialization is, you know, can you think instead of react, or, you know, get control of your emotions. But if for some autistic kids, if they're this telepathic, then they're this empathic as well. Empathic being like, you know, it's not that you're just getting a thought for them, it's someone's upset and now they're feeling the upset. Someone's angry, they're feeling it. And they feel it so strong that if someone feels anger, they don't even have to say it out loud. They're probably, it's almost like being thrown against a wall by it. You know, they're
Yeah.
so, just in the way that they're so sensitive to sound and everything like that. So they would be so, like they've talked about how, you know, for some autistic people, like even just walking by an ocean, like that would be way, way too overwhelming. And it's the same thing, I would imagine, like with emotions or body sensations, and it's just coming from everywhere. So, you know, probably as just, I don't know, like if everyone was autistic, like what would that be like if that was the norm? Like everyone was autistic. I don't know if we would be able to have really society. It certainly would look a lot different, but you know, I think it might make it hard for people to procreate, you know, because a lot of times, unless they're higher functioning, you know, a lot of autistic people are retreating within themselves. So, you know, it may not like really work long term. Like it may just have really been necessary for us to get some separation in order to.
Well, what it makes me think of is number two things. One is people that are kind of have a mental illness, like they have anxiety or depression to an extreme. We have like Chris Jordan. Chris Darden. The energy I expend filtering out the world is why I spend most time at home. So I think it's definitely a rescue thing is to separate out things, like to separate your emotions so that you can function. And then, so there is a kind of purpose. And the other thing that I thought of was time, because time, we created a past, present, and future to kind of hold up time, to create this structure so that we can move through it, so
Right.
there
Well,
is
time is really, uh, I've done a lot of thinking about time in the last couple years, and I really think time is like an overlay of where we're chopping up our experience, and we could chop it up into a day, into an hour, into a minute. And then it's like, what is happening really between points? Like there might be the clock structure of what someone overlays the experience, the hour, minute, day, but then also like our own intrinsic experience of time tends to be about like points of change, so people will say, well, when you're having fun, time flies. It's like, well, maybe when you're having fun, there's more going on in between, like 2 points of time. But if there's nothing going on, like then time just seems really slow. So, yeah, I'm not sure,
Well,
but time
I think,
is
yeah,
over.
the point, yeah, it's just, I think it's about this, this idea that you brought up where everything is all connected versus why we would need some structure, why we do need to compartmentalize certain things. So there's kind of good point. So it's like, again, it's like if you can harness the good points of both, and create something, maybe a device or a something that, like, okay, I'm going to turn it on, I'm going to turn it off. That would kind of be pretty cool.
Yeah. And, I think it's like anything else. It's like in some moments you might want to be more merged and combined. In some moments you want to have more of that separation. But yeah, I think if we're using this like to be going back to, when we want to be psychic, because when we want to go after information, I think approaching like any session or intentional session to get information, then we might really want to, let go of those divisions. However, at the getting back to, some of the problems, like if you are doing a remote viewing session or clairvoyant session and or mediumship, whatever it is, and someone is so over the top emotional that you're tuning into, you could totally get sucked into that. And then you're not really getting information anymore, or if you are
Exactly.
in a place and you get sucked into that emotion, and then you really have to take a step back and have some separation if you have, a hope of actually going forward to get that information.
Yeah, I
It's
was thinking also, like, when we're talking about telepathy, another thing is kind of like thinking about telepathy versus remote viewing versus mediumship versus all these things. Like, if you're doing what we call mediumship, and say we believe that there is, that when you die you just move into another, you transform into another life, and then say you are speaking with them, they're coming in your mind and talking, and you're having that, wouldn't that be telepathy? Or
sure.
is that mediumship? Is mediumship the same as telepathy? Is remote viewing the same as telepathy? Like, what are these all kind of this? Is it just about communication or,
Well,
uh,
well,
yeah,
yeah, like telepathy would be when you're hearing another person's thoughts. So that could happen during a remote viewing session. That could happen during a mediumship session with a spirit, or just, what, I was somewhere, I wasn't feeling well, and I was lying on a couch, and I was just thinking, oh gosh, like I really hope I feel better fast, because I was traveling. And I'm lying there, and suddenly I heard a voice, and the voice said so clearly, "Hey, Debra, it's Mike. I'm here to help." Well, Mike was my very first remote viewing instructor, who was an energy healing, Mike Vanetta, and he had died a few years before. And when he said it, like, I totally recognized his voice, and I heard it in my ear as loudly as if he was present. So that's telepathy, in the same way that my son in his sleep heard me, talking about, is it my fault, or I heard your voice. So yeah, we can hear deceased people, we can hear living people, and it doesn't, I would just say it becomes mediumship if it's in the context of a spirit, or it's remote viewing if it's in the context of a remote viewing session.
Yeah. We have a comment. We have a comment there. Aw, that's so sweet. I love it.
Can you read it?
I'm blushing. Fake Norwegian says, thanks for doing this podcast. You two are the real deal. We need people like you in this space. We do not need any more of the spiritual influencer types. Yay! No, we can't be anything but real. That's, like it or not, this is the way it is.
Yeah, it's hard not to be real.
I know. Remember the last time when you ran to get your seat and you fell right on camera? That was funny. That was real.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, it's now you see it. Now you see her. Now you don't. Yeah, exactly. That was funny. But next time, I think we need to talk about telepathy and aliens. Remember that movie, The Arrival? Because we're coming around time to go. I probably shouldn't have brought this in because I know you're going to have stuff to say. But remember that movie?
Aliens are very, very telepathic, and yeah, and I think they're telepathic where we'll be aware of them, but sometimes they can have an impact on our thoughts or what we're doing, and we don't even realize it. So yeah, that is a whole other topic. But one thing I did want to say is that the longer I go along in life, the more I am discovering how clear and loud telepathic communication can be. And, there's just, I think, like any other intuitive input, like say with visuals, a lot of visuals are very subtle, they're fleeting, you're barely sure you saw them, they're kind of cartoony.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while, bam, you'll get something that is like so vivid. Especially, I think it's like when you have bilocation happening, but like, I've had a few times or OBEs, but where everything looks as like even clearer than real life. But that's not how our visuals, typically look all the time, or at least not a lot of ours. I mean, for those of us that do clairvoyant work and remote viewing, we're used to getting, hundreds of visuals a week, but they're usually just like subtle. And it's the same thing with telepathic communication, like where it's almost like, okay, maybe I didn't quite, hear it, but it just kind of came in, or it's very subtle. But I've had some experiences where it was so clear, it was like a really loud radio playing in your head. Wow. And I had this one, I was about to do a reading for this guy. He was in India, and he was saying that he was like being tormented by this guy he used to work with. And the guy was psychically tormenting him. And it was so bad that he was thinking of killing himself. And we were going to be meeting. And, whenever I have things like that, I always keep an open mind, like maybe this person has going on what they, maybe it's exactly what they're saying, or maybe it's not at all, and they're just mentally ill. So I always like keep, a wide open mind of it could be anything. And I'm not going to know until I get into the session. But I would say like about 10 minutes before, I was just like sitting there, like eating something. And suddenly I heard this voice talking in my head that was so freaking loud. It was like a radio blasting, and it was a man talking, and he was like saying profanities, and he had a heavy Indian accent. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, this is what my client is talking about. Ooh. And I had that another time too with I was going to be doing a reading, but not like until that evening. And I woke up in the morning and I didn't know who I was. Well, I knew I was going to read the brother of, I hadn't read this guy before, but he was the brother of one of my clients, and they were both dentists. And so that was all I knew. So I'm lying there, and suddenly I start hearing a guy talking to me very, very loud, like so clear. And right away, I knew that he was gay, and he was kind of like I could just tell. And I was like, well, this is strange because one, this is so clear. And two, like I've never had a sense, like I didn't know, is this a spirit? What is this? But I never had a sense that they were gay. And he, at first, like I was like, is this a positive or negative thing? But he started getting really abusive. And I was like, you know what? I cannot deal with this right now. I do not want to deal with it. You're leaving. And I didn't realize that this was related to the reading. But when I got onto the call later, the guy who was a dentist, it turned out that he was addicted to nitrous oxide. So he was like, you know, dosing himself with it. And he was like having paralysis and stuff. But he said that like about 10 months earlier, he had started hearing a voice. And at first the voice was telling him like that he was God. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm like hearing God talking to me. I'm so blessed. And then the guy started to like, the guy wanted him to do like homosexual acts. And he was like, you know, I was like, can God be gay? Because this guy is, but this voice that's talking to me like is a gay guy that's trying to get me to do these acts. And he wasn't gay. Like he didn't feel like he was. He had always been heterosexual. So it turned out that whoever had visited me was the same person that was like tormenting him. And what we were going to do during the session was like helping him to get more empowerment to get rid of this guy.
To lay off the drugs.
Well, that was something else. Unfortunately, this guy my client ended up dying like within the next year. Yeah. I think he was like too far gone. But a lot of times you will see like kind of spirit possession and drugs kind of intertwined. But that was another time where just the communication was just so clear. And when I've had that, I've thought, you know, I wouldn't want it to be this clear all the time. You know, it could never turn off a radio in your head. Right. And I really do believe that a lot of people that are suffering from schizophrenia and things like that, they are hearing people talking. Yeah. There might be a combination of illness and psychic input, and maybe it's not always, but I really think we have to, you know, do a lot more investigation of, you know, when people are hearing voices and not just drug them up.
Yeah. Well, you know what, guys, we have to wrap it up. The next episode, I will be on the road. I don't know where I'll be, but I will be on the road, and I'm going to take everybody with me. And then eventually I will make my way. I'm on a road trip starting April 6th, I'm leaving. I should be by you in May. And then we're going to have one in person together. And we are already excited. We got some things going for that, right?
Yeah, that's going to be so fun. I need to start cleaning my house now, so we're ready for this.
I'm going to have the white glove test.
I'm scared.
Well, it was so great. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much for supporting us, and tell your friends. And we just want to keep growing this. We love getting your comments and everything. And everyone have a great week or two. And we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks